Well, hello everyone at the NFPA Conference and Expo. It's been a really great year for Pioneer Water Tanks America, so we're really excited to be here along with a lot of our dealers. And today we're going to be speaking about using rainwater for fire protection with regards to NFPA 13 A.23.21. So what we're going to cover is rainwater as a sustainable water source, the standard that regulates it, which is NFPA 23, fire sprinkler water quality requirements, the fire protection water capacity requirements, dual service water storage tanks for fire protection, drafting or fire department connections, also known as FDCs, and then we're going to just cover a few projects where we've already used rainwater as a fire protection water source. Alright, so rainwater harvesting in its basics is just utilizing a building roof as a collection space for rainwater and conveying it into storage for later use. And a lot of people ask about the legality of rainwater harvesting as a water source, and it's actually not illegal in any state or province or territory currently. There are 8 states that have restrictions on rainwater harvesting. So for example, the state of Colorado limits people to only collect up to 150 gallons. But here in Texas, we actually have one of the most comprehensive rainwater harvesting bills, and that bill is Texas House Bill 2391. And that means basically anyone who wants to collect rainwater in Texas, your right to do so is protected. So no one, even your landlord, even if you're renting, they can't prevent you from having a rain barrel. So it's a great water source, it's clean, it has a neutral pH, and more importantly, you can use it as a water source for fire protection. So, but rainwater harvesting has been done for so long that there are in the records as Thomas Jefferson using rainwater harvesting, and even he used that water for fire protection. There were a few fires that were put out in his barn using his rainwater cisterns. So he's on record as saying about how he has 2 cisterns on the northern side of the house, and those were reserved for fire protection, as well as the southern side that also helped supply water for the laundry, kitchen, and garden. What's really remarkable is that he was able to build his entire household in a rural area that didn't have a water source outside of his rainwater harvesting system. Okay, so why would we choose rainwater as a source of water? Well, the first start, it helps with low impact development. So if you're in an area that stormwater is an issue, then this is a great way to capture that stormwater and really utilize it sustainably. It also can help you with getting more LEED points for your building. So if you're trying to get some sort of government funding for LEED or anything like that, this can really help you reach those sustainability goals. It also reduces stormwater runoff. So having a gutter system that collects that rainwater and conveys it into storage, you're not having all of that stormwater collect on your building base. So it reduces that. For rural areas where utility water isn't actually available, so you're getting in areas that don't automatically have a centralized water system, rainwater systems are a lot less expensive than developing a entire centralized water system. It also restores local hydrology. We have a lot of dealers here that have rainwater systems that will just slowly release the rainwater after it rains, and that increases the amount of water that can go back into the ground, because our land reaches a saturation point where it can no longer take in rainwater. So if you can do that after it rains, then you're actually increasing the amount of groundwater back into the ground. It also reduces centralized water distribution use. So if you have a rainwater system on top of your utility water system, then you can use rainwater instead of using your utility water. Maybe you care about your water bill. Maybe you have an $8,000 water bill. Well, a rainwater harvesting system can give you free water. It can really reduce that impact. Not only that, but you can also supply water for fire flow issues. So maybe your water pressure isn't enough. Well, you can have a rainwater tank on the side and really bring up that water pressure so that way you have adequate water supply for fire emergencies. And also, it's just a clean, sustainable source of water. All right, so what does NFPA 23.21 really cover? It really covers what water quality and capacity requirements are necessary for fire sprinkler systems. So it covers a source of recycled or reclaimed water where a building owner can analyze the source of water to make sure that it won't corrode the fire protection system or the fire sprinkler system. As long as the water quality is found and tested and reviewed to be at the quality and capacity requirements that your fire protection system requires, then it actually is allowed. We've seen systems also use reclaimed water and gray water in Southern California. That's a common water source. So we're definitely getting there. It's becoming more and more common. So just a little bit more into water quality, what it's requiring. The water used for fire protection must pass testing to prove that it won't be corrosive or detrimental to the system. So that, of course, has to do in accordance to ASTM D5464. Rainwater is a sodium-free water source. It's nearly neutral pH. It has less contaminants than your average municipal water source. So a lot of people who use rainwater as a drinking water source in other countries typically won't usually add another filtration system outside of what's already there. But a lot of rainwater systems in America will. So you'll have filtration of the rainwater before it gets to your storage tank. And then you'll also have maybe some UV filtration or maybe microbe filtration just to make sure that there's literally nothing in that water that could possibly be a detriment to your fire protection system. All right, water capacity requirements for fire protection. This is never going to be a turnkey situation. It really is dependent on your local fire authority and the project specifications for that location, for that building materials, what exactly you're doing in that location. If it's just a residential home, for example, it's going to have completely different requirements than if it's used for welding or something like that. So we really encourage people to get with their local fire authority per project and really ask them what they want for your property. We're not the experts. The fire authority in that local area are the experts, and we will always go to the fire marshal's recommendations. So here's the NFPA chart that decides that, and you can find that also in NFPA 13, and it's also covered in a few other NFPA standards. All right. So what is a dual service water tank? So this is a great situation for people who are developing in rural areas. A lot of times properties will require water on hand before construction even begins. So how can you have a rainwater system tank before construction even begins, before you get that collection service? You can do that with a dual service tank. So maybe you have a 65,000 gallon tank and you're required to have 20,000 gallons on the property site before you even start construction. What we would recommend is if you don't have a water source, to just truck in water or maybe have a backup water source. Some people will have a water well with brackish water, and they'll use that temporarily just for a construction water source. And as long as they can keep it separate with two separate plumbing systems like this tank has, then you can actually use it again for a different application. So you'll fill up that water for the necessary construction, then you'll build the building, and you'll build the rainwater harvesting conveyance system on top of that, and so that way you'll be able to collect that water. And you can use that water for your irrigation or manufacturing or whatever you'd like to use it for, and save that fire water reserve on the bottom with its separate plumbing system. You have all of your outlets to where the water that is designated for the domestic supply storage would not be affected by the fire reserve supply. Once that capacity is lowered to a certain point where you're hitting the fire water reserve supply, then we would always recommend, adding 5,000 or 10,000 gallons on top of that. Then it would basically shut off, and you would be technically out of water for your domestic supply because you don't want to hit that fire water reserve supply unless you're in actual fire emergency. So we've seen dual service tanks a lot in Australia being used. They can be used to create a perimeter around the building with a fire pump, but they can also be used as a water source for fire sprinkler systems. All right, so what goes on to a tank that makes it a fire tank versus just a regular rainwater tank would be a drafting or fire department connection. So the main thing about all of these, again, is who is going to use it. It's your local fire authority, whether that's an actual volunteer fire department or a paid fire department or a fire district or even a private fire department situation. It really like depends on the property and how it's set up and how you or that property is actually regulated. So it's not a turnkey situation. Everything is specified to the project. So the local fire department must be able to connect to your water source and for consistent water supply. And that usually involves, not usually, but it typically involves a anti-vortex connection. So that way it can connect, it can pump out the water at an extremely fast rate, and it won't suck out the tank liner or won't collapse the tank with that anti-vortex outlet. So all of that is regulated, as well as the fire department connection locations, signage, access, the area requirements, what plants are allowed around the tank even, inspections, testing, maintenance on the fire department connections. Those are all in accordance to NFPA 25. Okay, now we're just going to talk about a few projects where rainwater has been used as fire protection. This is the Briggs Volunteer Fire Department in Texas. They're out in West Texas. What they do is they use this building roof here. It's a metal roof, so it's very clean rainwater that's collected. And it's stored in these two Pioneer tanks on the ground, and the fire trucks can just pull up to them, connect their trucks, fill it up with rainwater, and take off. So they don't have a lot of filtration. It's mainly like contamination filtration, so 1,000-count micron screens on every step of this way, so that way things like leaves and things aren't getting into this tank. But this water isn't meant to drink, so it's not up to potable necessary standards. It's just up to NFPA 25 standards. The next one is the Sisterdale Volunteer Fire Department, and this one is also in Texas. And this one was done by Rainwater Systems, Inc. out of Kerrville, Texas. What they do is all of their buildings, again, have metal roofs, and they collect the rainwater into a conveyance system that's then stored in the Pioneer water tanks. The trucks can just drive up to the side, connect really easily, and then take off to the emergency. All right, this is the McDonald's Observatory, which is in outside of College Station, Texas. What they do is they have a long rainwater conveyance system. This pipe is the commercial conveyance, and it's from their one of their school buildings. And it's kind of just out in the middle of nowhere, just in case of a fire emergency. It will release a pump and spray a perimeter. So these are just a few projects that we have going on, but we definitely expect more and more as fire protection becomes more of a necessity, especially in places like California, and where water is very restricted, yet there's still a need for it. All right, so now I'm going to open the floor to any questions. I know Jesse has a question. No? No. Scott is one of our dealers. He's a rainwater harvester out of Dripping Springs, Texas. And he actually just did a fire protection tank as well. So if you have any more questions about anything in particular about fire protection, we are in booth 247. I have a few handouts. I'll have all of my presentation materials online, and if this handout has that URL to go to. All right. Yes, sir?
Do you have a 6-inch hookup as well? And what's the biggest hookup that you offer?
Definitely. So we offer all of the different hookups from 4-inch all the way up. I think the biggest one that I've seen was the industrial style, which is what we used on the San Antonio First Responders Academy tank. And I forget how big that was, but it's a lot bigger than 6 inches. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Again, I'm Jessica Huntington with Pioneer Water Tanks America, and we are in booth 247. We're here to supply our dealer and installer network with top-tier water storage solutions. Thank you.